Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. Violence is spreading in the West Bank and across Arab cities in Israel, reaching levels synonymous with previous uprisings from the 80s and the early 2000s, leading some to refer to incidents as marking the beginning stages of a third intifada. Some of you may have seen the point-blank shooting of a demonstrating young Arab boy by Israeli plainclothes officers. These incidents were spurred following a September 13th raid on Temple Mount, located in Jerusalem's Old City, a sacred site for Arabs worldwide. Leaders on both sides are attempting to curb any perception of a third intifada. Netanyahu is saying on Saturday, in fact, that the attacks have been mostly unorganized, and the Palestinian Authority president, Mahmoud Abbas, calling the clashes potential for an intifada, which we don't want. Now joining me from Windermere, UK, to discuss all of this is Jeff Halper. He's with the Israel Committee Against House Demolitions. He is the author of many books. Among the most recent is War Against the People, Israel, the Palestinians, and Global Pacification. Jeff, I thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me again.
So, Jeff, give us a sense of what's happening there. You just left a few days ago, but prior to your departure, what was actually happening on the ground that concerns you?
Well, in some ways, it's kind of a lashing out on both sides. I mean, I don't like this both sides analogy because there's no symmetry of both sides. But I think, it's simply the oppression and repression has gotten so great that especially Palestinian kids, I mean, that's one of the interesting things about this. We're talking about 5-year-old kids, 6, 7, 10, and teenagers have simply been kind of lashing out. It began, it's true, with the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the closing of the mosque and threats on the mosque on the part of Israel. But it's spread all through the country. And I think it's a kind of desperation. I mean, one of the interesting things is that it isn't organized. It isn't political in that sense. It's kind of almost a self-defense, a resistance against the final stages of this permanent occupation, permanent apartheid, permanent imprisonment being imposed on the Palestinians. And I think what's significant is that it spread outside of the occupied territories. It spread inside Israel because the condition of Palestinian citizens of Israel, who are 20% of the Israeli population, isn't really much better than that of the people in the occupation. They're also subject to all kinds of restrictions and more being seen as a fifth column, as an enemy of Jewish Israel. From the Israeli point of view, I think this is mopping up operations. Israel simply sees the conflict is over. It's saying to the Palestinians, there's no more political process, no negotiations, there'll never be a Palestinian state. You're going to be imprisoned, and you either submit, or you leave, or you die. And I think this repression on the part of Israel, where mandatory prison sentences, hundreds of kids being arrested, house demolitions increasing, and so on, really shows that Israel is in the final stages of repressing any kind of resistance and of what it sees as pacifying the Palestinian population permanently.
And what do you make of Netanyahu saying on Saturday that the attacks have been mostly unorganized, trying to calm down the population? This seems out of character for him, who in the past has sort of seen these opportunities to escalate the violence against Palestinians.
Well, I mean, I think he sees that opportunity. His messages are mixed because what he's also been saying, I mean, he said it in the UN last week, is that this is incitement on the part of Abu Mazen, it's incitement on part of the Palestinian Authority, that it is organized. And, he's been saying that until just a few days ago, the Shin Bet, Israel's internal security services, said publicly, no, there is no incitement on the part of the Palestinian Authority, and he's had to change his line a little bit and say it's unorganized and so on. I mean, Netanyahu is a problem because he's trying to explain violence and resistance and really self-defense and despair and frustration, all these things, without dealing with the cause of it all, which is, of course, occupation, which is a word he would never utter. And so all he's left with is somehow blaming the Palestinians. So you've got to blame them individually, you blame them as unorganized groups, you blame Abu Mazen, you blame the Northern Islamic movement inside Israel, you blame Arab Knesset members inside. I mean, you find all kinds of people to blame, but he can't really come out with a good, coherent explanation of what's happening because he can't admit that the actual cause is repression and occupation.
So, Jeff, what are we to make of all of this now moving forward? Some people are warning that a third intifada might be in the works. Do you think that is actually happening?
I don't think so. It's hard for me to see that not because it shouldn't be a third intifada, and not because the anger and the rage and the frustration isn't there, but because Israel just has it too sewn up. You know, we have to understand that the IDF is there and the police as a permanent presence, not only in the occupied territories, but again, inside Israel. In addition, you've got the settlers, who are kind of a militarized force, semi-legitimate in Israel, that have been increasingly attacking the Palestinians, and they're part of the repression. And then, in addition to that, we have to be honest: the Palestinian Authority itself, in my view, is a collaborationist regime. The Palestinians are living under two occupations, and they'll tell you that openly. And the Palestinian Authority has been a repressive force. It's militias working for Israel, arresting people, torturing people as well. And they're a major source. I mean, ironically, Netanyahu blames Abbas for incitement. But in fact, as a Shin Bet says, they're actually very close collaborators. Nothing has interfered with the security cooperation, as it's called, between the Palestinian authority and the IDF. So, the Palestinians are really facing not only an Israeli repressive force that's trying to imprison them permanently and take their country, but a Palestinian Authority that's collaborating, with that as well. So it's really a very desperate time, I think, for the Palestinians.
Now, how similar are these events compared to, say, 2008, 2010 events?
I think they're different because those were political. They were much more organized. There was a sense that in a way, the Intifada is a push towards starting a political process or creating pressures, even internationally, that would force Israel into genuine negotiations, that in fact you could end the occupation. I think the difference is today that there are no Palestinians, almost, I would say, that think the occupation can be ended. I think they see it as a permanent situation. Many are leaving, actually, and there's really a sense of despair among the Palestinians. And that's why I think, I'm seeing that this is more of a lashing out, almost a self-defense, because the pressures put on the Palestinians, on the part not only of the army and the police, but again of the settlers, is such that they're really living in a pressure cooker. But it's not organized, it's not political in a way. And the fact that it's mainly young people and kids that are doing this kind of shows that in a sense. So the problem is that we've reached a place in which the Palestinians have nothing to lose, on the one hand, but on the other hand, they have nothing to gain. There's no political process that's possible today. And I think personally, we have to sit down, critical Israelis and our Palestinian partners, and begin to formulate our own solution to this conflict that I think is end the occupation, forget the two-state solution, certainly, which is over. forget negotiations, forget the PA, which I hope will leave the scene soon. We have to start talking about one democratic binational state in Israel, Palestine, and start to move towards that in order to really give a new sense of hope and possibility to both peoples.
Jeff Halper, I appreciate those comments and that idea, and I thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.